This video is a how-to guide on how to use one of our repair kits to remove and replace failed capacitors on a TV power supply board. Our kit comes with cleaning supplies, wick, solder, as well as capacitors as required. Note that our kits are assembled to cover many different models of TVs, so you may not need all of the capacitors, but once you've identified the failed capacitors, you can use the ones in your kit that are appropriate. The first step after identifying which capacitors have failed, you can see our other video on how to do that. We're going to locate the capacitors we're going to replace on this board, which in this case are these two. Always make sure you know which way the white stripe is facing. In this case, the white stripe of the capacitor is facing this heat sink. We turn the board over and we have to figure out which leads are the capacitor in question, and we can do that by flipping it over, and you can see them here. In fact, I've already put little blue circles around the leads that I need to desolder just to make it easy to find. I'm going to remove the solder and wick from our package. We've got our solder, our wick rather, and our solder. We're going to put the cleaning swabs and cleaning pads aside for a second, and we're going to put the solder aside for a second. So we're going to deal with the wick. Just place the wick and the soldering on over the lead. You can see the solder suck up into it. The wick can get warm, so as you use it and you have to grab a little lower on it, you may have to use pliers. Anyway, we're just getting as much solder as we can off the lead. The wick can stick to the lead when it's hot, so make sure you remove it beforehand. As the wick fills up with solder, you'll need to trim it. You trim the wick with any pair of wire cutters or even scissors. Just trim off the part that's filled with solder and continue to suck up the solder with the new wick. So now I finished removing the solder with the wick, and now you can see the leads. You can actually see the hole that the leads come through. The capacitor is almost ready to remove. The leads are probably still stuck inside the hole, so what you want to do is quickly heat up the leads while giving a gentle pull on the bottom side on the capacitor body itself. Now we're going to remove the capacitor. I've identified it below, and you can do this with two people. Sometimes that'll make it easier. You just want to apply gentle pulling. You can see it coming off. Because that lead could still be connected to a part of the board via solder, you want to be careful. And just like that, I've removed it. Alright, I'm going to use one of the alcohol cleaning pads that comes with your kit. Just going to open it up there. Take the pad and gently wipe it in the area where we remove the capacitor. That kind of gets the flux off, and then if you want, you can use one of the included swabs, give it a little clean down. So now you can see we have all four of these radial leads ready to go with our new capacitors. It's time to reinstall the new capacitor. Of course, you want to verify that you have the correct size and voltage for this particular replacement. You just check the one you just removed. You recall it's very important to make sure the polarity is correct and that the white stripe here, as previously mentioned, goes against this heat sink. You can also see the board has a little white hatch that also indicates the negative side. So with that, just place the leads in. So when we turn the board over, you can see the leads here. The capacitor will fall out if the leads are straight. So normally I just bend them just slightly either direction, and that capacitor won't fall out at this point. I like to have the capacitor as flush as we can to the other side of the board. So we'll bend these back like this, and then we're going to trim the leads. With my finger on the other side holding the capacitor in place, I'm going to trim the lead as close as I can get to the board. And now we're ready to solder. With the leads trimmed, now we're going to add some solder to these. See, we got a nice little bead there. I'm going to reflow it a couple times just to make sure it's seated well. And that capacitor is now installed. Repeat for any other capacitors you may have replaced. With all the caps now installed, I'm going to use one of my alcohol cleaning pads. Again, just gently. Don't want to rub too hard. Get some alcohol on those areas that you soldered. Then if you'd like, you can follow that up with one of the Q-tips that are in your kit and just clean up around the area.